Hi there, Matt and Steph here again, and today I want to talk to Matt about something that's a little bit sensitive, but he's really good at dealing with it, so I thought I'd ask him some questions and get his perspective on this. Matt, what do you recommend to property owners who have long-term tenants who they care about, but they need or want to sell their property? It's a sensitive situation. How do you recommend dealing with it with their agent, and what should happen there?
Yeah, so this is a sensitive issue because one of the key things to notice and understand right off the top is in this market, with the prices having risen to the point that they are, when we list a property at their current prices, new buyers, it's not economic to actually keep the tenants. So a good example is a $2 million property financed could cost over $10,000 a month in mortgage costs. And that same property likely isn't renting for $10,000 a month, so it's not cost effective. So it is very important to know that when these properties are listed, it is very likely the tenant will not be able to stay there long term. The other thing to note is that when I'm dealing with a client who has a tenant, my duty is to the client, and the client's needs and wants come first and foremost. But I like to explain that I'm still an empathetic human being who knows that this is someone's housing, and I am very aware of our current housing crisis in our town. So we are sensitive to those situations, and I have conversations with our clients, especially when they feel and care for their tenants, is making sure that we are sensitive to their needs, especially with housing, but also with showing schedules and accessing the property, making sure that they're comfortable and that the timing works for them, and making sure that potential buyers are made to work around those tenant schedules safely and securely. But also discussing what could happen when we have buyers and what the potential scenarios would be and what the owners can do to maybe protect their tenants or set up scenarios where the closings are delayed to a certain point to allow the tenants time to find other housing, or even finding buyers that could want to keep the tenant for a short period of time prior to their own personal use or any renovations that they're looking for. But the bottom line, it's just empathy. It's knowing that whatever's going on, the people are living in these houses and maybe losing their housing. And it's an extremely stressful situation, and trying to make sure we're working with owners and our job and buyers to respect that. And we're not going to lie and say that a tenant gets to stay there indefinitely. No, we want to tell them the truth, that they have time to figure out what their next step is, and communicate them, with permission of the client, communicate with the tenants robustly about the potential timing of when their eviction may come with a new buyer.
And so what are the rules with regard to, I hate to use the word, but evicting a tenant? So depends on the scenario, but what happens if somebody's renting a single family property, let's say, for example, and the owner needs to sell?
Yeah, so BC has strengthened their tenant rules in the last couple of years. And the key point to note is that if someone is buying a property and you do not have a fixed tenancy, if you have a fixed tenancy, let's go there first. The date at the end of that tenancy is the potential end date. So if you have a 1 year lease and that ends at a certain date, you can't be forced out before that date. There still has to be given legal notice before the end of that term. If no legal notice is given before the end of that lease, then that lease automatically turns into a month-to-month. Far more common, people have let their leases lapse into a month-to-month, at least in my experience, and they're on a month-to-month system. What happens if someone's in a month-to-month is that in order for someone to occupy the unit, evict a tenant, there is only a couple of valid reasons, and they are personal occupancy. An owner or a new owner wants to move in and use the property themselves, or they want to move in a direct family member. That is a parent or a child. It is not uncles, it's not cousins or distant family. Parents themselves or children are the only valid tenant or occupants that can force a eviction. Now those situations are 2 months plus the remainder of the period. So what that means is, the most common 99% of all leases I've ever seen, the tenancy is on the first of the month. So if I give you notice today, which is the middle of the month in this current situation,
let's just say
it's the
September
middle of
13th
September
today.
So if I give someone notice in the middle of the month, they get the rest of that period and 2 more months. So the other extreme examples are if I give notice on the 30th of September, they get 2 months plus that 1 day. That's the 2 months notice. So if I gave notice now, the eviction date would be December 1st. If I give notice on October 2nd or October 1st, they get the rest of October, then 2 months. So now the date would be January 1st, right? So that's the period. It's 2 months plus the remainder of the lease period. Now, if your lease period is not the first, then we have to move that around with whatever that lease period is.
That's if the new owner or expected immediate family members are expected
to move in.
Okay, and what happens in another situation?
So the other most common situation we're looking at now is renovations. So a new owner's buying maybe a place that's not in great shape and they want to do a major renovation or a tear down and a rebuild or something like that. That notice period is longer. It's 4 months plus that period. So if someone's planning that major renovation. And in most situations, if they're doing a major renovation and leasing it out again, the person who was evicted must be given the opportunity to rent it back after the renovation. If the owners are moving in after the renovation, then that doesn't apply. Same thing with the direct parent themselves or a child as the occupant.
So if they're doing a major renovation, there could be an increase in the cost of rent, presumably,
yes. Yep.
And that's allowed.
Yep, I don't have the formulas for that off the top of my head, but it's worth investigating if that is your situation.
Okay. So that's what happens if you have a tenant. It's great to work with your realtor. Just to sum up, work with your realtor to figure out how to take care of them and make sure that you're acting, if you care about your tenant, you're acting in a way that showings and photography and things like that for your property listing are done in conjunction with the tenant so that they know and there's no surprises. It helps everything go more smoothly. You're more likely to be able to show that property in its best light if the tenant is working with you and they understand that you have empathy towards them. Mm-hmm. Is that a good sum?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks for joining us.